Smoked cabbage? Ooh.
Actually, I have.
Yes.
You would have.
Yes.
I used to sell it.
You know, I got the worst sore throat I ever got one time when I listened to that Donovan song and actually spent about an hour scraping the inside of a banana. You know?
I did that too.
Did you do that too?
13.
I put it in a pipe and tried to smoke it. Holy shit, the fire alarms went off.
So for any of you youngsters wondering how you get into talk radio, that's it. Scrape the inside of the banana peel.
Yeah, mellow yellow my ass, you know. No.
We are walkie-talkie examples of when you're young, you should just say no.
This question came from...
May I just say, this is the first town hall I've ever done where Tom Hartman is high. This is so awesome.
This question comes from Patrick right here in Kent. He says, my number one issue in this country is the problem with our media. I get really upset when people get misinformed by the Fox News channels of the world, and with the information they get from them, they keep voting a bad Republican for president when this happens. How are we supposed to level out the playing field in order to have strong democracy in this country? And let me preface it by saying, other than getting you all on 500 stations.
Well, what's wrong with that?
Nothing, but is there step two?
No, I think that's step...
Well, you know...
Can I ask you about MSNBC? Do you think MSNBC is doing for the left what Fox does for the right?
No.
Because that is...
I really don't. Rachel's program is great.
Yeah.
Keith Olbermann.
What's the other guy?
Keith Olbermann.
Keith Olbermann.
Not Ed Schultz. Keith Olbermann's program is great. But, you know, I think, and either Hartman and I were talking about this or somebody, but we can't rely... mainstream media is gone. That belongs to corporate America. So we have this wonderful thing, the internet, the web, and that's where it's going to have to shift to. That's where I think the organizational power is. That's where the power of spreading information is. Is it broken up into little pieces? Yes, of course it is. But you're never going to hear Brian Williams telling the truth. You're never going to hear Charlie Gibson telling the truth. They can't, even if they wanted to, because they are not masters of their own domain. Oh, wait a minute. That was the Seinfeld episode, too, wasn't it? Yeah.
That's another issue.
I can't get away from Seinfeld. But, so I think the quick answer is Tom and I had breakfast this morning. Some of the stuff he's doing with his program, with audio and video streaming, you know, I'm sitting here listening to him this morning and think, Jesus, God, you know, I can't wait to get back to Atlanta and talk to my partners about this. So it's going to be that sort of thing, I think, to get mainstream media is gone. It's gone. It belongs to somebody else. It's not ours anymore, if it ever was, but it's certainly not now. So we just got to build our own, and we've got the tools to do it. Good God. I mean, we do.
Yeah, and the left does a pretty good job on the internet, right?
I think so. I think the left, I think most of the creative people are progressives or liberals just by nature. You know, the artists, the musicians, the poets, you know, they're... when's the last time Tom DeLay went out and painted a picture? I mean, I realize that Hitler painted houses, but I mean, the creative minds are on our side, aren't they?
Here's if I could just toss this in. It was an article that I wrote called Talking Back to Talk Radio back in 2002 that became the original business plan of Air America. And I was at the first fundraiser when Shelley and Anita Drobny were putting this thing together back even when it was called Anshel Media, before it was even Air America, with Joe Lockhart from the Clinton White House in Chicago. And a fundraiser, and we had a bunch of very, very wealthy Democrats. And we were pointing out that Rupert Murdoch lost $100 million a year for 5 consecutive years. $500 million before Sean Hannity made $1. $500 million. And we were trying to raise something like 5, 10, 15 million. These guys have gone through $500 million. We were unable to raise 5, 10, 15. You know, I mean, we got a little bit of money. And Air America got started, and Air America burned through $14, $16 million in its lifetime. It's still around. I mean, we're on syndicated by Air America. I was up until just a few months ago, and I'm on their station in D.C. The biggest crime that Air America ever committed, if you want to call it a crime, the biggest mistake, was not their programming. It wasn't anything else. It was the fact that they were undercapitalized. And we talked, if they had the kind of money that Rupert Murdoch put into Fox News, we would be kicking ass on radio and television up one side and down the other, because we've got truth on our side. And what astounded me was that there were not Democrats out there who were willing to look at this as a business proposition and say, yeah, I'll throw $100 billion. I mean, there were some, God bless them, there were some wonderful people who put out of their own personal money, $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, a lot of money. But in the grand scheme of things, to really influence the major media, as Mike pointed out, it takes huge amounts of money. And so what we're going to, and it simply has never been available for Democrats. And so we're going to have to do it at the ground level and the grassroots level, and we're going to have to use the internet and use it aggressively and use it creatively. And I think that a lot of that is starting to happen right now.
I've got to say, the people you see on the stage and others, 5, 6 years ago, maybe, Tom, there were no progressive voices nationally syndicated on
Mike and I were on 7 years ago
on
Mikey America.
But I mean, very, very few. We've made a lot of progress in the last, through Air America and Dial Globe, Orlo Jones Radio, whatever. I mean, and we're out there now competing to the extent that we can get platforms. But Tom, you're absolutely right. I spent a lot of money trying to raise money, a lot of time trying to raise money for progressive talk radio. And I can tell you, the right gets it. I mean, they put up Murdoch and others. They put up the money. They bought the stations. They built the networks. They subsidized their hosts.
They buy newspapers like Scaife.
They buy newspapers. They've got the talking points, the message machine, and they've got it out there. And I can tell you, I've gone to some of the wealthiest liberal Democrats in this country and tried to get them to write a check for progressive talk radio, and they don't get it. They don't see the importance of it. And people have told me, no, we decided we're going to give our money to candidates instead. My response is, how the hell do you think the candidates are going to get their message out?
Right.
Unless they've got people like us who can help them get that message out. I mean, it's
this,
so, but
so
the other thing, I think the left has got to understand that the think tanks and the whole thing, they've got to be willing to put the money up and lose the money. When people criticize Rupert Murdoch to me, my answer is, fine, he's good for their side. Let's get our own Rupert Murdoch. That's what I want.
Because we've had this discussion all among ourselves. I mean, I think that we all know this story. You guys have probably heard this, that many of our shows beat the conservative shows in our time slots in many cities around the country. The fact of the matter is we're on 50, 60 stations. They're on 600. So, and so even when I've been on a panel with, what's his name, right? We just did the fairness panel, doctrine panel.
Mike Pence.
Right. How do you have that discussion, Tom, when they're just willing? You and I brought cold, hard numbers. We're like, Tom's like, well, I beat Rush Limbaugh in Seattle and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I beat, Laura Ingraham, whoever it is in my time slot, in this state, this market, this market, this market. We're not saying necessarily the fairness doctrine is the answer, but how is this fair when we're beating the conservative shows in many of our markets? And, many of us have for many, many years, and we still can't, we're on this ceiling of how many stations. So,
which gets to the ownership question, which, Tom, you've been talking a lot about, too, is that don't call it the fairness doctrine, whatever it is. I think that the new FCC has to lay down some rules that the right-wingers cannot go into any market and buy up all the radio stations in that market and put nobody but right-wingers on those stations.
Yeah.
They're public airways, may I remind you. We own them.
Right. Yeah, that's
so
what
they
I
shouldn't
always,
all be all right.
That's what I always say, is the airwaves don't belong to me or to Sean Hannity. They belong to you. And we're not saying that we should get shows if we can't compete and make money.
Amen.
But all of these shows are competing and making money. And, so how is that fair that we're not getting anywhere near the platform the conservatives are? These shows that can compete and get ratings and make money for the state.
Conservatives own the means of production, though. I mean, you talk about MSNBC, and they've got a few liberal hosts on, Rachel and Keith and them. But who owns them?
Yeah,
General Electric,
right?
I mean, with their military contracts and all of this kind of stuff.
What this goes back to is the 1964 defeat of the Goldwater-Miller ticket, and it was so massive